Welcome to Pody Says, Petty Revenge, for all the stories of small victories over those who've wronged someone. You don't have any? Well, can you check in the back? This story is from years ago when I was the assistant to the retail manager of a small mom and pop swimming pool supply store. One of the many aspects of my job was inventory management. I did the ordering, and I would frequently audit the stock to see what was low, what we had, and make any adjustments in our computer for stuff that broke, was taken by our service department, expired, etc. I also had the displeasure of dealing with our customers. It was the middle of summer, and as you might guess, it's the busy season for pools. I would typically work 60 plus hours a week, with one day off. Frequently that day off would be a Sunday one week. Then I wouldn't get another until the following Friday, so you can imagine that sometimes my patience was thin. The store is hectic and busy when a customer comes in looking for something, specifically what I don't remember, but we had none on the shelf. I apologetically told him that we were out. Then he hit me with the classic, "Well, can you check in the back?" Remember when I said I was in charge of inventory? I knew we had none, and I told him I was sure we didn't have any. "Well, can you check anyway?" Cue malicious compliance. I put on my best customer service smile and said, "Sure, I'll be back in a few minutes." So I mosey on back to the stockroom, knowing full well it's not there. I take my time and stroll through the stock, catch my breath from the business of the floor, and enjoy the peace and quiet of the stockroom where there are no customers for a little bit. Then I head back into the chaos of the store and smile apologetically again to the customer. "No, sorry, there's none back there." The customer thanked me for checking and left disappointed, but at least I got a couple minutes to myself. He was very specific about what data he wanted. So I work for a large IT company, and we had several projects which work with other companies and other departments. It's pretty gargantuan, so it's pretty easy for you to come across teams, people who you will never have met despite having years of service with the company. In this story, I've been assigned to a project where we are migrating legacy data from one old system, let's call this Pepsi, to a new one, let's call this Sprite. Normally, this would be a fairly trivial exercise except for two things. The new system is air-gapped for security reasons, meaning that any inbound data transfer needs to be handled via removable media. The project manager assigned to the project is a complete a-hole and completely disregards the advice of the technical staff, despite having no understanding of our tech himself. So we had a call today to discuss what data would be captured, how much was needed, etc. In this discussion, the subject of file attachments was brought up. For further context, in the Pepsi system, files can be attached to user requests. These can be anything from docx to PDFs. In the target air-gapped system, they have Microsoft Office and all the tools you'd expect most IT systems to have. We are nowhere near the stage of moving everything yet, so the customer decided that they wanted a proof of concept test to see how things would work, specifically geared around attachments and how they would upload into Sprite. The following conversation took place. "We need to test how Sprite handles attachments. Can we move some attachments from Pepsi into Sprite?" "Yes, we can, but the system is air-gapped, remember? So a data movement request will take some time. Also, that doesn't matter. Just get it done." I understand, but it usually takes 3 to 4 days for these transfers to be organized because someone has to drive to the site to do the transfer. I know that time and billing are critical here. You might actually be better just creating dummy attachments inside Sprite and testing them that way. All the infrastructure is there for it. And also, I was going to say, look, stop trying to make the decision when I've already made it. Make the arrangements to get this to happen. Okay, can you send the minutes out with this included, please? The project manager obliges, expressing in the minutes that go to every man and his dog, explaining that he has rejected my solution and that we will wait for the actual data. Because I work in day-to-day operations with these tools and I know everyone involved, I was more up to speed than the management type who only had a passing interest in us for as long as his project assigned him here. In my response, I finally get across the point that I was trying to say in the meeting. I would arrange the file transfers immediately, but of the staff who had security clearance to access Sprite that weren't on the opposite side of the world, one was on maternity leave, one was off with COVID, and the third had left the company the previous week. I estimated that it could be as much as 3 weeks before his request was completed. Don't think he was very happy based on his response. Pogo Arrow chimed in, "I love good PMs, but the bad ones will make one's life very difficult. I'm just waiting for a good story to come out of one in particular. Had to send an email the other day telling him that no, we can't spend 2 to 3 hours discussing how short-staffed we are because, well, we're short-staffed." Tro16P says, "As usual, when asked by you if they can give you that instruction in writing, he should have listened." Take away my overtime? Okay. Hello, this sounds like a common theme, but here's my story. I was offered a crap salary and promotion to get a job I was already doing, through increased responsibility by being a good employee with great job performance. I turned it down. I wasn't allowed to negotiate either, which I still did. F that rule. The counteroffer was still far less than median, which was the lowest I would go, as I did a good job. It doesn't look good when employees refuse promotions, and near every manager in the company knows me. I'm the supply guy after all. So they tried taking my overtime away. They had to be gunning after my pride and performance and not wanting to be fired. To note, I live a simple life and don't care for the money, but my friends in the company are in similar positions and have families and need the money. I can get another job easy enough that pays enough for me to live off of. I turned it down because it's not a lot of money to a big company and don't want to fuel mistreatment of its employees, my friends. I complied with no more overtime, but told them I needed the overtime to do a good job. As a supply guy for a large company, I order millions of dollars of supplies throughout the year. I didn't have time to negotiate big orders anymore. HR didn't care, and my director boss didn't think I'd let my job performance drop. I started doing bare minimum within my HR-provided copy and paste job description and only 8-hour days. I sucked. I did the role above my job title to begin with, but they would never acknowledge this or they'd have to pay me for it. So now I was spending $20,000 more a month than I used to. Boss knew, but what could he do? He effed up. I'm the only person in the company with knowledge that can only be gained through experience to do the job. I'm also critical to many operations. This is small figures to a large company, and it's not like my boss in HR would tell people they messed up in my handling. He also spent the personnel budget on hiring his friend to be a director, so I heard later. So I stuck around until I had trained a replacement, since I didn't want to leave on a bad note, since my great friends I made in the company are the managers I worked with daily for years. So then I left. It'd be a bad story if this was all. When I left, a lot of people were curious why. My friends near every manager weren't afraid to talk as my boss wasn't their boss. Without going into detail, I'm popular in my company for lower-level workers. I've saved the day a few times and do all I can to make their job easier. Due to the other complaints with HR and poor pay, me leaving fueled their discontent further to a notable performance level. This prompted an unofficial investigation by other directors. Our COO was the likely core of the problem. He hired my boss, his friend, and had a say in the HR director's hiring. Other directors soon drove them out, as it's hard to like a job where your employees and coworkers hate you. The HR director still works there and causes problems, but she no longer has a say in pay levels. A few managers and good employees got raises. There's still a lack of base pay, though, if you ask me. Overall, I like to think I had a key role to play, as I knew a few directors on a personal level. I'm back at college after dropping out the first time for medical reasons, and still talk to my friends at the company regularly. For belief, this isn't made up since I'm not entirely detached from society. This isn't your regular big company. It grew rapidly in the last 5 years, and many directors were promoted up and still busy fighting the corporate mindset takeover, from what I hear. Porcelain Punisher 1 says, "It's so difficult to work for places like that. At my previous job, we had quarterly meetings where the VP would drag all of the employees and managers into one of the big unused areas and talk about record profits, enormous growth, all of the new clients we were bringing on, etc. Sounds great, but whenever someone would ask for a raise, it wasn't in their budget. They pulled the no overtime card on us as well, and some employees actually worked off the clock. The company ended up having to settle a class action lawsuit, which was brought forth by an employee, surrounding the unpaid overtime and lack of breaks. When I gave my notice, my boss was so surprised that I told her no one was happy there." The OP replied, "It's astonishing how some people can be so oblivious. If you're going to mistreat us, pay for it, and we'll be fine with it. 2-job households are nearly required if you want a family." One of my friends ended up getting a decrease in pay. She wasn't offered a promotion, but they just put her on salary. Her overtime made up the time to be more than her salary. So they raised her salary to match, and that's all. Now she's paid and expected to work overtime. She was furious and ended up only working 8-hour days. They had to hire someone else to help. She doesn't mind anymore, but she no longer cares for the company. Radio Gaga. Rank structure for context. We have 2 sections in the warehouse. Peter runs the top end, and Greg runs my end. Both have a 2 IC. Dean is the manager for the whole warehouse. We communicate with handheld radios across the warehouse. Occasionally, I would make funny noises over the radio or play little jokes. For example, if someone was asking to borrow a forklift, I would get on the radio and respond with, "No, leave me alone." Or when someone was asking, "Who has XY forklift?" I would respond with, "Yo mama." Relatively harmless stuff. This apparently made Peter's blood boil. He warned me that he would go to Dean if it continued, so I stopped. And had intended for that to be the end of it. The following morning, Dean tracked me down and had a chat with me about it anyway. I found out from somebody else that Peter had already gone to Dean before I was even warned. This pissed me off a bit, so I decided to maliciously comply with the instructions I was given from Dean. Dean's exact words were, "I don't mind if you have a bit of joke every now and then towards the end of the day, if there are no customers around." So, although I had intended to stop entirely, I now had an exact set of rules to follow if I wished to continue. So, past 5 o'clock, if no customers are around, I have been telling awful dad jokes and making fart noises over the radio. Peter tried to reprimand me on the first few instances, to which I reiterated what Dean had told me. For the past week and a bit, I have been happily joking away, knowing that Peter can do nothing about it, and it makes him very angry. "Sorry, Peter, you dug your own grave." Serenity B chimed in, "Had a coworker play the local college football team's fight song over the warehouse intercom once, or at least that's what he thought. Turns out, it was over the entire building, and there was a VIP in a meeting with operations and control. Fortunately, the VIP was a fan of the team, so we only got a verbal reprimand.